discourse on the solution to awkward situation in life, the spiritual journey of Parikshit Maharaj. So Prabhuji is talking on this subject today. So any further ado, I would like to request His Grace Devakinandan Das Prabhuji to start the discourse. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Can you hear me, Anand Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. So Hare Krishna to everyone. Very happy to meet all the devotees again. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to remember Krishna and to speak about Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So today we will look at the first canto. There is a nice two verses from the first canto. It's known as the first canto, chapter 18. The title is considered to be Parikshit Cursed by a Brahmana Boy. Parikshit Cursed by a Brahmana Boy. And the text would be text 24 and 25. 24 and 25. So I'm just going to read it, and maybe if you have time, you can also connect and look at the verses in your own places. It will be very nice to read the purport as well as the shloka. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the verses text 24 and 25, I'll just read them. Ekada dhanur udyamya vicharan mrigayam vane mrigan anugata shrantaha shuditas trishito brisham jalashayam achakshanaha pravivesha tam ashramam dadarsha munim asinam shantam militalochanam. I'll just read the translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry and thirsty while following the stags. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Shamika Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. So I'll just read the purport now. The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in proper time he calls such devotees up to him and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, because a devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demands. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become apparently fatigued and thirsty just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities. One has to give up all attachment for worldly relations before one is able to go back to Godhead. And thus, when a devotee is too much absorbed in worldly affairs, the Lord creates a situation to cause indifference. The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though he may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Sometimes he creates an awkward situation, and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. Maharaj Parikshit was to become the medium for the revelation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Sri Krishna, as his grandfather Arjuna was the medium for the Bhagavad Gita. had Arjuna not been taken up with an illusion of family affection by the will of the Lord, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been spoken by the Lord himself for the good of all concerned. Similarly, had Maharaj Parikshit not been fatigued, hungry, and thirsty at this time, Srimad Bhagavatam would not have been spoken by Srila Shukadev Goswami, the prime authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this is a prelude to the circumstances under which Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for the benefit of all concerned. The prelude, therefore, begins with the words, once upon a time. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Transcendental Purports and Translation Key. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So Hare Krishna to everyone again. I think I see devotees from all around the world. Very nice to see everyone. Jai. Thank you again to Anand Prabhu, Viraj Prabhu, devotees from Vaman Kshetra in Australia. It's so nice to see everyone again. And today we take this occasion to try and remember some wonderful pastimes of the Lord through his devotees. Today's verse is a very important verse in Srimad Bhagavatam because in the purport particularly, Prabhupada is speaking about a situation that very often devotees are actually facing. And this is what we call an awkward situation. Prabhupada uses the word awkward to describe the situation that Parikshit Maharaj was facing. And if you look at the dictionary meaning of awkward, there are a few words to describe awkward. But awkward is a combination of difficult, uneasy, potentially embarrassing. So when you have a situation which is tricky and difficult, unexpected sometimes, and unusual, then that situation is considered to be an awkward situation. I think all of us at some point in our lives have somehow or another been placed in an awkward situation. Awkward situation also means that the answer, the way to go forward is not very often so clear because there are so many considerations that you have to take into account when you are faced with an awkward situation. The best thing that we can understand as an awkward situation is actually the example of Parikshit Maharaj, because nowhere else in Bhagavatam is the word awkward best used to describe the position that Krishna put Parikshit Maharaj in. And that is why it's very important for us to read this particular purport, because all of us at some point of time would have either faced awkward situations, have tried to deal with them, or would be soon facing awkward situations. And somehow or another, we will also have to face them. So the real question is, what is the advice of Srimad Bhagavatam for devotees to face awkward situations? That's an important thing. Before understanding this point of awkward situation, it's very important to remember a very important verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. The verse is actually spoken by Lord Brahma in his prayers, celebrated prayers to Krishna. It's in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, I think it's the 8th verse. Tatte nukampam sushamikshamano bunjana evadmakritam vipakam ridvagva purvir vidadan namaste jive tayo mukti padase tayabha. So you'll understand that this verse is something that we have heard very often. All the great acharyas chant this verse, and Srila Prabhupada himself actually gave a purport to the verse. And in the verse, it is very nicely stated by Srila Prabhupada that a devotee always faces the challenges of life with this mood. And actually, Brahmaji in this situation was actually put in an awkward situation. In the 14th chapter, 10th canto, Brahma is chanting this prayer, Tatte nukampam sushamikshamano. Why is he chanting it is important. He's chanting it because, if you remember, for 1 year, Brahmaji tried to challenge the supremacy of Krishna. How did he do that? He tried to do that by actually stealing the young boys and the calves from Vrindavan, and he kept them hidden in a cave. And he wanted to see whether his stealing them and taking them away from Vrindavan would actually create an awkward situation for Krishna. And after 1 year, when he realized there was no hoo-ha about the disappearance of the boys and the calves, because that generally would have been the case, what did he do? He came back to Vrindavan and he thought, how is it that no one is making noise about the loss of their dearmost sons and the cows, have lost their calves? What's happening in Vrindavan? And he was very shocked, because when he came to Vrindavan, what did he see? When he came to Vrindavan, Bhagavatam tells us that he saw, amazingly, he actually saw all the boys and the calves. And it seemed as if they were all there, and he was bewildered because he knew that he had hidden them. So at that point of time, he realized that these calves and these boys were all the expansions of Krishna. And Krishna was never placed and is never placed in an awkward situation. So no one can try to place Krishna in an awkward situation. But Brahma, his devotee, was in an awkward situation when he realized that actually he had tried to fool Krishna and he had failed. And in that awkward situation, what happened to Brahma? Brahma became very humble. He was humbled by an awkward situation. And that is a very important thing for us to take back, Prabhus and Matajis. Krishna very often creates an awkward situation in the life of a devotee. And sometimes, even when we are faced with awkward situation, it's how we respond to an awkward situation that makes the difference between a great devotee of the Lord and a struggling devotee of the Lord. It is so easy, Prabhupada writes in the purport, for someone to say that an awkward situation is unfavorable and frustrating. Those are two words Prabhupada uses in the purport. Prabhupada says that in the purport, very often, many people take awkward situations to be unfavorable. Sometimes they say this is such an inauspicious thing. And very often, people become frustrated. So sometimes, even in devotional service, if we are not on the level of the great acharyas, like Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, it is easy for us to be consumed by moments when we feel frustrated. Why is it that I'm practicing devotional service and still these awkward situations are coming? So when faced with such awkward situations, it's very important for a devotee to have the right mood and the right attitude. And that's why the verse 10:14:8 is important. Because there, Brahmaji so nicely says, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering his respectful obeisances with his heart, his words, and his body. Such a person is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim, because his father is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a very important point that we should always keep in mind. And actually, if you look at the life of Parikshit Maharaj, if you look at his spiritual journey, you will see that this is how he defined his life. Even though, Parikshit Maharaj was faced with the greatest test that hardly any one of us would face in our lives, still he passed it with flying colors because he took it in the right atmosphere. He took it in the right attitude. And that's very important. So awkward situations will always come. But the choice we have is, do we find them to be unfavorable and frustrating? Or, as Brahmaji correctly pointed out, do we take them in the right consciousness? Instead of becoming morose because an awkward situation has come, we should actually turn it around as an opportunity and remember Krishna. We should say that it is not Krishna's fault that I'm placed in an awkward situation. Rather, the Lord is so kind that he's pushing me towards devotional service. And whatever that I'm suffering now, don't blame anyone. Just look to yourself, because it must be some reactions from my past misdeeds. This is the mood of a devotee. And that is why Parikshit Maharaj encapsulates this mood. So this is the background and the foundation to understand the journey of Parikshit Maharaj. You all know, Prabhus and Matajis, that Parikshit Maharaj, even when he was unborn in the womb of his mother, he was already protected by Krishna. the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama was coming at full velocity to kill him as the last descendant of the dynasty and the heir apparent to the Pandavas, if you remember. Parikshit's father had been killed, Abhimanyu, and his mother Uttara was expecting him. And just when they were going to see Krishna off, because Krishna was leaving Hastinapur for Dwarka, at that point of time, word came that a powerful Brahmastra was coming in the direction of the little boy who was unborn in the womb of his mother. When Uttara Mata realized that this terrible and envious Ashwatthama was going to destroy her child in the womb, what did she do? She had the Pandavas who were there. She had exalted soldiers who were there. But she did not turn to them. She turned to the source of their strength. She turned to Balam Balavantam. That means the source of all that is strong in this world. And she turned to Krishna as he was getting on the chariot. And Bhagavatam says that she started praying very beautiful prayers to Krishna. Pahi Pahi Mahayogin Deva Deva Jagatpate. So this is how, she started chanting to Krishna to save her child in the womb. And what did Krishna do? Krishna was amazing. Krishna is Yogeshwar. Even while he was standing in front of everyone, Krishna assumed another form with the discus and chakra. And he went inside the womb of Mother Uttara. And he covered the womb of Mother Uttara with his potency and his effulgence. And there he personally stood there. And he used his Sudarshan chakra. And what did he do? He destroyed and annihilated and nullified the effects of the Brahmastra. How wonderful it is. And you must remember one important fact that many people forget. At that point when the Brahmastra came, technically Prabhupada writes in the purport that the Mahabharata war had not ended yet. It had not ended yet. That is why Ashwatthama was still shooting Brahmastras all around. But even though the war was still technically on, and actually Krishna was bound by his own promise not to interfere, Prabhupada writes in the purport that Krishna actually, what did he do? He actually destroyed the idea of being a moralist. He broke his vow and he decided, let me use my weapon. He took up a weapon, his own weapon, chakra, and he protected the unborn child, Parikshit Maharaj. Can you imagine? So Parikshit Maharaj, even before he came into this world, he was a very special devotee. And that is why even as he grew up, he became the emblem of spiritual life. And Bhagavatam tells us that just before this awkward situation was created, he ruled the world in such a way that even Kali, who tried to enter into the kingdom, could not spread itself widely. And he took Kali by the sword and pushed Kali out and forced and compelled Kali to only be in places where gold would thrive, because that is where the influence of Kali would be. Just imagine, this was the greatness of Parikshit Maharaj. And now, after Parikshit Maharaj had established a very royal age of peace and prosperity, where in his kingdom, now Krishna decided that he had other plans for him. And this is the greatness of Krishna. We must always remember, Prabhus and Matajis, that while we may have one plan, Krishna always has another plan. Sometimes our plan may align to Krishna by his mercy. But when our plans are not aligned to Krishna, ultimately, our plans have to become aligned to him. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his plans for his devotees are always good. And that is why Prabhupada writes in the first line of this purport, if you study the purport carefully, Prabhupada says actually that when Krishna created an awkward situation for Parikshit Maharaj, he created it based on his kindness. Prabhupada uses the word kindness. And that is why I wanted to quote the earlier verse of Tatenu Kampam Sushamikshamanu. When a devotee is aligned with Krishna, and suddenly Krishna imposes something very awkward on a devotee, the devotee has faith in Krishna to know that Krishna is his well-wisher. So this is the thing that happened to Parikshit Maharaj. You will realize that once upon a time, as this verse tells us, Parikshit Maharaj was moving around. And Bhagavatam tells us as he was moving around, he was actually going for hunting. And in the forest, after he had finished hunting, he became hungry and thirsty and fatigued, as the verse tells us. Now, generally speaking, Prabhupada says, when great devotees of the Lord become thirsty, when they become fatigued, or even when they become very tired and hungry, they are generally so powerful as devotees that they have great sense control. They are able to control their senses very well. What is that nice verse? It is in 258 of Bhagavad Gita. Yada samhariti chayam kurmo angniva sarvasaha indriya tebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita. Prajna pratishtita. The mood of a devotee is that devotee is always fixed in the consciousness of Krishna. So actually Parikshit Maharaj is such a person. He's actually prajna pratishtita. He's actually a fixed personality. And yet on that day, he could not control his fatigue. He could not control his hunger. And Bhagavatam tells us he could not control his thirst. And he became so fatigued and hungry that he moved around looking for a place where he could actually take care of his senses. So it's a very interesting point that actually Krishna created such an atmosphere for a devotee, but it is out of his kindness. So what did Parikshit Maharaj do? Bhagavatam tells us Parikshit Maharaj moved around and he saw a hermitage of the great sage Shamika Rishi. And you all will know that Shamika Rishi himself was a great sage. And what was he doing at that time? At that time, Shamika Rishi, Bhagavatam tells us, was concentrating on the Supreme Lord. He himself had controlled his senses, and therefore he was unaware of the outside surroundings. He was completely absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. So one devotee absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, another great devotee coming to see this devotee. Generally, when two devotees meet, it is a time of celebration. Like I'm seeing all of you. For me, it is like new birth. When Vasudev saw Nanda Maharaj, what did he tell? He said so nicely, that it is so nice to see you. And it is said that when devotees meet each other, it is actually like we are taking a new birth and new opportunity to remember Krishna. So I'm happy that some of you have your Zoom videos on, so at least I can see all of your faces, and that's really nice. Otherwise, I can't see anything. I only see names, This way, it's so much more personal, actually. And of course, when you smile, I become happier, and that's really nice. Good to see everyone putting on your videos now and smiling. Hari, hari. So Parikshit Maharaj came in and he saw a great devotee. And this devotee was Shamika Rishi. And as Shamika Rishi was seated, unfortunately or fortunately, from a material point of view, they were on two different levels. Here was a great devotee who actually was thirsty and hungry. And not only was he thirsty and hungry, but remember, he was the Lord of the whole kingdom. He was the king. He was the king. But Shamika Rishi was a sage, a great Brahmana. And what was he doing? He was remembering Krishna. The goal of both devotees' life has always been and was always Krishna. But one devotee was very absorbed and the other devotee was very hungry. Both of them were acting according to Krishna's plan. So Parikshit Maharaj tried to indicate that, listen, I'm a bit hungry and I'm a bit thirsty. Can I have something? If not for hunger, Parikshit Maharaj wanted some drink at least. And Prabhupada writes, it's just good manners if someone comes to your house, if you have nothing to give the person, at least give them some water. It's not very expensive to give water, Prabhupada says. All you need is good manners. That's what he says. But now, even Shamika Rishi did not even give him good manners. So then, Bhagavatam tells us, Parikshit Maharaj became a little bit upset. He was a bit upset. And why was he upset? Because he felt that I'm very thirsty. And at that point, he was unable to control his senses as he normally will. When a pure devotee of the Lord appears not to be able to control his senses, Prabhupada writes, there is a plan of Krishna. And we should not take that activity of that devotee too seriously. In many, many letters, when two disciples of Prabhupada would fight sometimes, they would write to Prabhupada letters. If you read those letters, Prabhupada at the end would say, I understand how you feel. I understand you are hurt. I understand you're upset. But Prabhupada would end the letter by saying, but ultimately you're both working for the same cause. Please don't take these matters of differences between two of you too seriously. Such a nice point. He would just say, don't take it so seriously. In other words, we should not be killing each other because of awkward situations. We should still behave like Vaishnavas. We should still be tolerant. So Parikshit Maharaj was about to be set up, so to speak, by Krishna. Why? Because if he did not become disturbed, then Bhagavatam would not be revealed. So Samika Rishi was innocent in this. Parikshit Maharaj became tired. So what happened then? He asked for water and no water came. And finally he decided, as he was leaving, he was a bit upset. He thought, since I've got such a cold reaction, he says, since I've got such a cold reaction from Shamika Rishi, I should actually reciprocate by giving him something cold. So what did he do? He found a dead snake, and dead things are generally cold, isn't it? So he took the dead snake, and what did he do? He just put the dead snake as a garland. He put a dead snake as a garland on Samika Rishi. And the moment he did that, Bhagavatam tells us, he walked away. And when he walked away, Bhagavatam tells us that actually when he looked back, he began to think, why did I do this? Why did I do this? This is another great thing about a devotee we learn. Devotees sometimes, for whatever reason there may be, devotees very often, they may be put in a situation where they may react. Parikshit Maharaj reacted. But the moment he reacted, he repented. This is a very important understanding that we get from Bhagavatam. Sometimes, because of the forces of the material modes or the plan of Krishna in this case, Parikshit Maharaj put a dead garland when he shouldn't have done it, that too of a snake. But the moment he did that, as he was walking back, devotees are so soft in their hearts that they never hold anything against anyone. The materialist often has that tendency. Once we get angry with someone, that's it, you're on my radar. I'm always watching you. So the next time I see you, I already have a fixed idea of you. But the devotee never thinks that way. The devotee may have some misunderstanding, but tomorrow when we see each other, it's all gone. It's all gone. Because we know that you are so precious to Krishna. In that mood, we will never fight with anyone. And even if someone fights with us, instead of wasting time fighting, we'll just chant and read Bhagavatam. So Parikshit Maharaj was remorseful. Very important point, Prabhu and Mataji. He became remorseful. And Bhagavatam says that when he became remorseful, what happened to him? When he became remorseful, he became repentant. When a devotee becomes repentant, Bhagavatam says, Krishna can be seen and perceived in the heart. This is an important verse, that is found by the prayers of the unborn child. Atapyamana hridayam. It is stated in Bhagavatam that the unborn child prays to Krishna. He says, Krishna, you're so powerful, you're unseen, and yet you are in the womb with me, and you are the one who's protecting me. And then he says very nicely this point. He says, my Lord, you can only be perceived by those who are repentant. And this is a very important thing we should take back from Parikshit Maharaj. Even though Parikshit Maharaj was placed in an awkward position, how did he react after he acted awkwardly? He reacted in a Vaishnava manner. Immediately he pulled the brakes on his activity. He inspected his own activity, He was thinking, why did I do this? And then he began to express repentance. He said it had nothing to do with the sage. The poor sage was seated and he was just, meditating. What have I done? And then he realized in his heart that whatever I've done is not right. And I have offended a very great sage. This is another very important point we come to understand. And the moment he understood that he had actually done something that was wrong, Parikshit Maharaj, by the time he reached his palace, he understood that for his offense to a great devotee of the Lord, he was prepared to pay. Very important point. And this is how we must also be in devotional service. So when something like a Brahmashtra is coming to us, like an awkward situation, we should try whatever we can under the protection of the Lord. But ultimately, we must depend on the Lord. And we must accept that it takes two hands to clap. I remember Guru Maharaj always telling us, in any dispute, there is no one hand. There's always two hands. Maybe one hand is louder than the other, but it takes two hands to clap always. A devotee who understands that, even though his senses become disturbed, even though his senses try to exhaust him, he becomes what is known in Bhagavatam as Bhagavata Pradhana. This is a very important point. I think it is stated nicely, in a verse, 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 49th verse. If we can, we should hear that and remember that verse. Dehendra prana manodiyam yo janmapyashud bhayatarsha kriche samsara dharme avimuyamanaha smritya hari bhagavata pradanaha. And it is nicely stated there that within this material world, whatever happens, this material body is always going to give us problems. Bhagavatam tells us the body will always be born and it must decay. The life air, Bhagavatam tells us, is always harassed by hunger and thirst. And you can see that's what happened to Parikshit Maharaj. By the instrument and plan of Lord, he was harassed by hunger and thirst. Then Bhagavatam tells us the mind in this material world is always anxious. And intelligence hankers after that which cannot be obtained. So misuse of intelligence is when we run after that which we cannot obtain. Sometimes we hanker for something for the whole of life. And we tell ourselves, only after I get there, I'll become devotee. Only after that, I will study more Bhagavatam. But it never happens. And by that time, Yamaraj has caught up with us. And it's too late. So that's why Bhagavatam tells us, intelligence that is not used for Krishna will always hanker after that which cannot be obtained. And at the end of the day, all our senses become ultimately exhausted by the constant struggle in material nature. But Parikshit Maharaj showed us something different. Parikshit Maharaj, even though he was caught by an awkward situation, he quickly came out of the awkward situation. How did he do that? He was remorseful of his action. And then Bhagavatam tells us he became repentant of his action. And because he was remorseful and repentant, he then understood that he had actually committed an offense to a great Vaishnava. And he accepted that Shamika Rishi had no wrong and that all the wrong was on him. And by the time he reached the palace, he prayed to Krishna that whatever happens now, please, I am prepared to face it. And this is the courage that Krishna gives to a devotee who faces an awkward situation but does not blame others for the awkward situation. The moment we blame someone for the awkward situation, we cannot be remorseful, we cannot be repentant, we cannot be humble, and we waste our time with the blame. And remember, just after this, when Parikshit Maharaj walked into the palace, he received even more grave news. The grave news was that Shringi Brahmana had come to find out that his father had been insulted by Parikshit Maharaj. And so Shringi Brahmana, in a great disproportionate nature to the offense that was created by Parikshit Maharaj on his father, he condemned him to die in 7 days. 7 days from the day he cursed. Not 7 working days, 7 holidays, 7 days. Just 7 days. And that's all the time he had. That's all. And the moment he was cursed for 7 days, when Parikshit Maharaj heard that, imagine what an awkward situation he would be. An exalted devotee, put in such an embarrassing situation where he was cursed by a Brahmana boy to die in 7 days. An entire life of devotion and devotional achievements wiped out because of one curse. Just one curse. If I was Parikshit Maharaj, I would definitely have counter-cursed. Or I would try to go and talk to Shringi Brahmana, lift your curse, lift your curse. I have so much to give to the world. This is not the way to end. I would argue with Shringi Brahmana and say, look, I was saved in the womb by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How dare you curse me? So many arguments he could have put forward. But if he did that, then 7 days would run and he would not be able to perfect his life. So that is why it is stated in the verse that we just said, Dehendriya Prana verse. When a devotee understands that the awkward situations of this material world are actually samsara dharme avimuyamanaha. It is the nature of the material world where a gentleman can never live peacefully. And awkward situations are always there. And very often, because the Lord is anxious to reclaim his devotees, he creates awkward situations as the purport has stated, so that he compels his devotees to increase their devotional service. How many times when we have been having life very easy, our sadhana has just gone into what we call neutral mode. And how often when the danger of our life is going, or something terrible has happened to us, or we're on the brink of leaving, or something is about to happen, suddenly our chanting has increased. Suddenly, everything has gone up. Suddenly we are remembering all our shlokas, which for 10 years we could not remember. This is how the purport tells us. This is how the purport tells us. Krishna, by his act of kindness actually compels a devotee to increase the devotional service. So as devotees, we should be gladdened that Krishna puts us in an awkward situation like life and death and disease to remind us that, hey, samsara dharme avimuyamanaha. What are you expecting from this world? The nature of the world that your senses will be completely exhausted in the end. So what can you expect in this world? So then become what? Become not bewildered. Because the Bhagavatam verse tells us, one who simply remembers the lotus feet of the Lord and who remains aloof. This word is very important. The word that is used in that verse is the word aloof. The same word aloof is used in this purport. You know what is another term that's used as a synonym of aloof? The word that's used to describe Parikshit Maharaj is indifferent. The word that's used in the purport is indifferent. Krishna created a situation where instead of becoming consumed by material activities, Parikshit Maharaj was pulled out of it, given 7 days, given a curse, and then he had no choice but to sit down and spend time with Krishna. And that is why when we understand that this nature of the world is bewildering, then we become one thing. We come out of the activities. We are in the activities, but we are not in the activities. That's why Krishna loves the lotus flower. Lotus flower has that ability. It is a beautiful flower, but consider where it is growing. Pankaja. It is growing in mud. That is the meaning of Pankaja. It is a flower generated from mud. And the muddy waters or the swampy area where the lotus flower grows, it never bewilders the lotus flower. Meaning to say, the lotus flower is not touched by the ingredients of the mud. It is a beautiful flower. And any water that touches the lotus leaf, you'll find that the lotus flower, even the surface of the flower is waterproof. So no drops of water can remain long on the flower. For a while it is there, but very soon it must drop into the mud. And the lotus flower remains as it is. Because this is the nature of Krishna. And this is the nature of the great devotees of the Lord. And if we take up devotional service, then Bhagavatam ensures that we will also not be bewildered by the awkward situations of the world. And that is the courage that we must take from the great episode of Parikshit Maharaj. And that is why Parikshit Maharaj is considered to be Bhagavata Pradhana. He's Bhagavata Pradhana. Very important point. And that is why the word indifferent is important. The moment Parikshit Maharaj heard he was actually cursed, he said, he did not fight with the curse. He accepted it. And so we must understand one point. And this is the point that's the crux of the verse today. Krishna's kindness and Krishna's desire is shown in the episode of Parikshit Maharaj. Please remember this point. I remember my Guru Maharaj studying these episodes, and these are the two things that he told us. He said, first you must remember, the desire of Krishna always reigns supreme. It is his plan, and it is his plan to put Parikshit Maharaj in an awkward situation because he wanted to hasten Parikshit Maharaj leaving all the material activities that he was consumed by when he was a king. And he wanted Parikshit Maharaj to become the vessel, the medium through which Bhagavatam would be spread to the rest of this world. So when Krishna has a plan, no one gets in the way. But then when Krishna has a plan, the plan is not like our plan. His plan very often makes it sound like it is very unfavorable and frustrating. To the materialist, his plan is frustrating. But to the spiritualist and the devotee, his plan has a lesson for us. So first thing we must remember, Krishna always creates a situation where it is favorable for us to become indifferent and renounce from the world. So whenever you're put in a corner, Prabhus and Matajis, and you have to give up something by force, please know that it is Krishna. It is Krishna. If you wanted something so badly and you thought, I could use it for Krishna consciousness, for devotional service, but suddenly Krishna is not agreeing with you, then please know that you may say you want to use it for Krishna service, but Krishna knows your heart better. We may be attached to something, and in that name we are saying it is devotional service, but actually it may not be useful for us. So that's why I remember Guru Maharaj telling me, whatever Krishna wants, we want. But whatever Krishna doesn't want, we don't want. So we have to unlearn some of the bad qualities that we have. In this material world, we think that whatever we want is good. And as devotees, we think that, well, I need a new printer and I need a brand new laptop. But if I don't get that, then I can't study Bhagavatam. If I don't have the one volume Bhagavatam, then I won't study Bhagavatam. We have all these funny ideas, Oh, if someone doesn't pick me up, I can't go for Mangalarti. All these things are coming, Or, I have too much work and that's why I can't do this. But Krishna will create an awkward situation where if you can't go for Mangalarti in a nice way, he'll force you to wake up and go for Mangalarti. And that is his kindness. So remember, if we don't flow with Krishna's plan, then Krishna eventually forces us into his plan. But he's a kind father. He knows what is better for us. And as a devotee, we should also accept that Krishna always knows better than us. Krishna made Parikshit Maharaj just like his grandfather, Arjuna. Remember, Arjuna was giving so many wonderful arguments, Prabhus and Matajis. His arguments were really good. I should not fight for this. And they were all good in the material world, except that they were not aligned with what Krishna wanted. So Krishna smashed everything, put him in a confused situation, put him in an awkward situation where he was completely bewildered and he had to surrender. And the moment he surrendered, then Krishna unraveled his plan. When Ghatotkacha, the great son of Bhima, if you remember, he was a powerful half Bhima and half Hidimbi. So he had demonic powers as well as the strength of his father. And he was fighting in the Mahabharata war, when suddenly they realized, that there was no other way to defeat. The Kauravas realized there was no other way to defeat Ghatotkacha except if Karna released his Shakti weapon. But Karna wanted to keep that particular weapon for Arjuna. But it became so intense, the battle, and the Kauravas were so pressured that at the end, he had no choice but to release a weapon in his arsenal that was very powerful. And when he released it on Ghatotkacha, Ghatotkacha died. In the camp that night, the Pandavas mourned the loss of Ghatotkacha. But Arjuna noticed that Krishna was standing at the corner of the camp and he was having his trademark mysterious smile. Krishna always has mysterious sidelong glances and enchanting smile. So Arjuna goes up to Krishna and says, Krishna, in this tragic situation, how can you smile? Where is there a silver lining in all this situation? And Krishna then smiled and told him, Ghatotkacha has attained the supreme destination by his sacrifice. He has seen me and taken darshan of me on the battlefield. He has perfected his life. You shouldn't be worried about Ghatotkacha. Actually, the only purpose for which Ghatotkacha was actually born into existence is just to make sure that he would draw out Karna's weapon. So that now without that weapon, Karna will eventually be powerless to stop you and the Pandavas from executing my order. And this is the greatness of Krishna's plan. No one can become an impediment. So if you have an awkward situation, then be remorseful, be repentant. Understand that this world is actually finally moving by Krishna's movement and learn to flow with what Krishna wants. Very important point. Otherwise, if Krishna wanted Karna to be stronger than Arjuna, well, technically Karna's archery skills were amazing. But within a space of a few hours, he was cursed by his guru. And then he was cursed by a Brahmana when he killed a cow by instinct. And he lost all ability to finally become victorious. How Krishna removed that? By creating such an awkward situation in his life. That was Krishna's kindness for the Pandavas. So we should always remember and learn that despite whatever activities that we are engaged in, we must learn to execute devotional service sincerely, and our attachment to this material world, if we don't come out of it ourselves, Krishna will create a situation where we will have to come out of it in any case. If you have time, you should remember this nice verse from 3rd canto, 5th chapter, 13th verse. 3, 5, 13. It's a very nice verse. Sashraddhadanasya vivardhamana viraktimanyatra karoti pumsaha hare padanu smriti nivritasya samasta dukkap yavama shudatte. 3, 5, 13. And if you look at the translation, it's really nice. In the translation, it is so nicely stated, for one who is anxious to engage constantly in hearing the topics of the Lord, Krishna Katha gradually increases his indifference to all worldly things. This is the platform on which Krishna wanted to bring Parikshit Maharaj onto. Parikshit Maharaj was already a great devotee of the Lord. But Krishna wanted to hasten his perfection. And he knew that Parikshit Maharaj had great taste for Krishna. So what did he do? He reciprocated the anxiety of Parikshit Maharaj to always remember Krishna. And how did he do that? He created a situation where gradually the indifference to this world had taken place. So for us also, this verse is very important. Maybe Krishna won't create an awkward situation for us. But as it is, I think you will know your own awkward situations. Some of you may be going through them now. Some of you just passed them. Some of you, it may just come, but it will come. But before it comes, we should always remember that if we engage in Krishna Katha constantly, if we are anxious to always hear about Krishna, that Krishna Katha will increase our indifference to this world in a natural way, not in an artificial way. It will not mean that we are careless with our duties, but it will mean that we perform our duties immaculately, but we save all the time that we get for the lotus feet of Krishna. That is the expert way in which Krishna, through Bhagavatam, can induce the same indifference that was induced in the heart of Parikshit Maharaj through the mercy of Krishna. So therefore, Bhagavatam tells us that sometimes we don't even need to be in the situation where we have only 7 days to increase our love for Krishna. Just by constantly hearing Krishna Katha, indifference towards all other things will happen. And such constant remembrance of the lotus feet of the Lord will vanquish all miseries. Prabhu's, Mataji's, it will vanquish all miseries. Bhagavatam says, without delay. Without delay. Somebody's mic is not on mute. If you can put it on mute, that would be good. Thank you. So this is a very important point. And that is why in this verse, we are remembering the word indifference. And in this verse, we are remembering the kindness of the Lord. And one other thing that's really important in this verse is the point that Prabhupada brings up about too much absorption in worldly activities. When we become very absorbed in worldly activities, it is very difficult for us to remember Krishna. And the point that was given actually to, it was given by Vidura to his brother, Dhritarashtra. First canto, 13th chapter, 17th verse. 1, 13, 17. Evam graheshu saktanam pramattanam tat ihaya atyakramat avidnyataha alaha paramadushtaraha. And that is very important. In that verse, Dhritarashtra is told by Vidura, my dear brother, you don't understand the powerful effect of time. Parikshit Maharaj was caught by time, isn't it? Time was running, 7 days left. And in the same way, Dhritarashtra was told by Vidura, your time is running. You cannot slow down time. You cannot. And time is so powerful, it will just come in a very imperceptible manner. You will not know it is there. And it will just overtake you. But it will overtake those who are very attached to family affairs and who are always engrossed in taking care of their properties. That's why he was speaking to Dhritarashtra. Because Dhritarashtra means one who's very attached to his material assets. The opposite of Dhritarashtra is Dhritahari. Very important point. So we want to be Dhritahari. Because Parikshit Maharaj, when he realized he had 7 days, what did he do? He dropped everything, Prabhu and Mataji's. Everything he dropped. And he immediately decided to put his son, Janamejaya, he put him immediately as a successor. He was not attached to his throne. And proof of the fact that he was not attached to his throne was because he was ready immediately to drop it. And why could he do that? Because throughout his life, Parikshit Maharaj was always absorbed in Krishna Katha. Please remember that. His renunciation was not artificial. It didn't come last minute. Sometimes those who are not studying, when they impersonally speak about this aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam, do you know what they say? When they impersonally speak about this part of Srimad Bhagavatam, they say that Parikshit Maharaj renounced the world because he was forced to. But Bhagavatam spoken by our acharyas do not say that. Bhagavatam spoken by our acharyas tell us that actually Parikshit Maharaj's entire life was the life of a devotee. He had his assets, his devotional service was his asset. And from the time he was unborn, he was touched by the Lord. His name is Parikshit because the moment he was born, he looked everywhere. He examined every part of the world for what? For Krishna. And while he was examining the world for Krishna, he was examining his heart always so that he could always keep Krishna in his heart and not Maya in his heart. So he was always absorbed in Krishna Katha even though he was busy with all his kingly duties. And it is his Krishna Katha that finally attracted the mercy of Krishna. It is his devotional service that finally attracted the mercy and kindness of Krishna to create a situation where the world will see how he reacted to an awkward situation. And even till today, the world glorifies Parikshit Maharaj. Because instead of counteracting Shringi Brahmana, what did he do? Na asyattad pratikurvanti. He did not counteract the curse of the sage, of the Rishi boy. He did not. He did not. Even though Shamika Rishi chastised Shringi Brahmana and told him what you did was wrong, he did not come and say, you see, your father said it was true. No, he didn't waste time. Immediately he accepted that this is now what I must do. And Bhagavatam tells us, he left his palace, he walked to the river Ganges. And when he sat down at the river Ganges, everybody started to understand. All the great munis and rishis, they all started hearing of Parikshit Maharaj, that he had renounced his life, that he had been cursed and he had only 7 days left. Even in those days, without WhatsApp and social media, somehow news traveled very fast. And Bhagavatam tells us everybody came and they all sat down at the banks of the river Ganges. And it was such a beautiful gathering. And when Parikshit Maharaj saw all of them, what did he do? He fell at the lotus feet of all these great devotees. Amazing. He fell at the feet of all their lotus feet. And these are his prayers to them. And before we end, we should remember the mood in which he received this awkward situation. And we should remember the consciousness in which he thrived in an awkward situation. Tasyeva meghasya paravaresho vyasakta chittasya graheshu abhichnam nirveda mulo dvijashaparupo yatra prasakto bhayamashudatte. This prayer starts in 1:19:14 of Srimad Bhagavatam. 1:19:14. So the awkward situation that was created in 1:18:24-25, you can see his reaction to the awkward situation in 1:19:14, 15, and 16. This is how we study Bhagavatam. And this is what he said. Now, Parikshit Maharaj addresses the assembly and he says the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the controller of both the transcendental and the material worlds, mundane and transcendental. Why is this important? Parikshit Maharaj says this at the very beginning because he's telling us who creates awkward situations in our life, not Shringi Brahmana. Gajendra was caught by the awkward, he was caught awkwardly for 1,000 years by the crocodile. But he realized it was not the crocodile who was creating the awkward situation. He said that this awkward situation is created by providence. So this is the first thing we understand from the prayer. Parikshit Maharaj is telling us that when we are placed in awkward situation, you please see that Krishna is in control, both of the spiritual world and the mundane world. And now what has he done? He has graciously overtaken me in the form of a Brahmana's curse. In other words, Parikshit Maharaj saw the Brahmana's curse as Krishna. Amazing. Can you imagine that? We saw a curse as a curse, but he saw the curse as Krishna. And he says, because I'm so attached to family life, Krishna knew that the only way to save me was he had to appear before me in this way, get me cursed, and so that I fearfully would have to give up everything and fall at his lotus feet. Do you recognize the humility of a devotee when faced with the awkward situation? No blame, no wasting time, just the humility that it is my fault. I'm suffering, but he's so kind. He has overtaken me. And this overtaking is necessary for a devotee. Why? Because overtaking by time means death. But overtaking by Krishna means life. And that is why Parikshit Maharaj is so happy. Then in the next verse, he so nicely says, Tanmopaya, Tanmopayatam Pratiyanta Vipra Ganga cha Devi Drita Chittamishe Dvijopashrittaha Kuhakastakshakova Dashattalam Gayata Vishnu Ghataha. Now he says, again, O Brahmanas, I offer my obeisances unto you. I pray that if I should take birth again in this material world, I must have He says, you please accept me as a surrendered soul. This is the next verse. He says, please accept me. Pratiyantu Vipra. Brahmanas, please accept me as a surrendered soul. This Mother Ganges which is in front of me, she is the representative of the Lord. Mother Ganges, you also accept me as a surrendered soul. And then he says, I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. That is why he could face the awkward situation. My Guru Maharaj said that Parikshit Maharaj took Krishna and his lotus feet and placed it in his heart. And the moment he placed it in his heart, on the basis of remembrance of the Lord, automatically without separate endeavor, he became aloof and he became indifferent. This is the royal road to become aloof and indifferent. Not to pack your bags and walk away, but it is the consciousness that is most important. And then he says, it doesn't matter what the snake bird is. In fact, he says, let the snake bird, Prabhupada translates, or whatever magical thing the Brahmana has created. My Guru Maharaj said, by writing that, Prabhupada is saying, actually Parikshit Maharaj wasn't interested what was coming for him. If it's a snake bird, let it be a snake bird. If there's some magical thing the Brahmana was going to create, let him create it. But let him bite me at once. At once. In other words, we don't want these awkward situations to linger. Because when they linger, if we are not with Krishna, we become disturbed. This very important point. That's why Parikshit Maharaj said, let it come and let it bite me. Finish it off. Because I'm remembering Krishna. I only desire, in the last line, I only desire Gayata, Vishnu Ghataha. I only desire that you all of you, continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. He's not saying that he should sing the deeds of Vishnu. He's saying, please, you all sing. Why? Because when we hear the great devotees of the Lord singing the glories of Vishnu, we become purified. We want sadhu sangha that way. That's why the mood of a devotee is always to hear. We want to hear. If someone asks us to speak, we may speak. Otherwise, we are very anxious to hear. And then finally, the last verse, he says is very nice. He says, Punascha bhuyat bhagavati anante rati prasangas chadad ashrareshu mahatsuyam yam upayami shrishtim maitreya astu sarvatra nama dvijebhyaha. And he says very nicely, I again offer my obeisances to you, Brahmanas. I pray that for some reason, even after being bitten by the bird, if I'm not qualified to go back to Krishna and I have to come back again to this material world, then I only pray for three things. I pray first that I will always have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna. Then I pray that I must always have association of his devotees. And I pray that I have friendly relations with all living beings, because they're all part and parcel of Krishna. These three prayers are the responses to the awkward situation that was created when Parikshit Maharaj was faced with it. And that shows us that he reciprocated with Krishna by seeing Krishna's kindness. He did not blame Krishna. He didn't blame or accuse anyone. He did not find time for it because he had no time, but he used it well. And because he was like that, and because he chanted all these prayers, then what did he do? Then finally he sat down, and then Shukadev Goswami came. The reason why Shukadev Goswami does not come before these prayers is because these prayers qualified Parikshit Maharaj to receive Shukadev Goswami. These are the prayers that qualifies a disciple to receive the instructions of his spiritual master. And this is a very important point, because even with the mercy of the spiritual master, we still have to undergo awkward situations in life. But if we have this mood when receiving the awkward situation, this mood attracts the mercy of the spiritual master. And therefore, from the first canto to the 12th canto, Shukadev Goswami sat down and he instructed the whole bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And he did that only because an awkward situation was created. If you think of it that way, I think we wouldn't be so angry or upset if we had an awkward situation and we had to sit down to hear bhagavatam, isn't it? Why not? If it means that that is the way for us to hear about Krishna, then we must have the courage to say, let it be so. And so now we go fast forward to the end of the time we spent together, where Parikshit Maharaj has now sat down and heard the entire Bhagavatam. And after he heard all these amazing points of Bhagavatam, in the 12th canto, towards, I forget the chapter, but towards the end of the 12th canto, Shukadev Goswami has spoken on Bhagavatam. And then he turns to Parikshit Maharaj and he says, is there anything more that you want from me? And Parikshit Maharaj now says, my dear Shukadev Goswami, you have given me everything. I've heard from you Bhagavatam. It is the perfect summary of all the Puranas. It perfectly describes the Lord Uttama Shloka. Now what does he say? In that chapter, there's one point he says, my Lord, now I have no fear of Takshaka, that snake bird that was going to come. He says, I have no fear. This is what happens when we engage in Krishna Katha. Whatever fear of awkwardness that we have in the beginning, if we do it in the association of devotees and we hear about Krishna, that fear will go. In fact, Parikshit Maharaj says, not only do I not fear Takshaka, I don't fear any living being. Not only Takshaka, even any living being. Why? Because I have become so absorbed in hearing Bhagavatam that it has destroyed all my fear. And now he takes permission, from Shukadev Goswami. Oh Brahmana, please give me permission now to resign my speech, to resign from the functions of all my senses, and to concentrate on the Lord. Please allow me to absorb my mind, purified of lusty desires, and please allow me to give up my life. He did not even give up his life on his own accord. Such a great disciple to ask permission from the spiritual master that now please allow me to give up my life. And Shukadev Goswami blessed him. And after being requested by that, Shukadev Goswami then got up and he departed from that place. No sentimental exchanges. Oh, it's been nice sitting with you, wish you all the best. No, Bhagavatam said he finished. He stood up and he departed from that place. And what did Parikshit Maharaj do? He sat down on the banks of the Ganges. He sat down on this kusha grass and he then concentrated his mind on Krishna. And at that point of time, he had already left his body. Now, to end this whole thing, just see how Krishna's plan is. Takshaka, you remember the snake bird, it had been sent by the angry son of the Brahmana, right? It was now making its way to kill Parikshit Maharaj. Now, the beauty of Takshaka bird is that it can assume any form. So as it was coming, some of the sages who were sitting at the Ganges, they were still hoping that we must stop somehow this bird. Out of goodwill, It cannot be that after 7 days, Parikshit Maharaj should die. Is there any way to stop the bird? Let's try. And Kashyap actually volunteered. Because Kashyap Muni actually had that ability to actually, he had this ability where he could actually, if something was burnt or something was destroyed, he could revive it. That was his greatness, Kashyap. So what happened? Kashyap walked in the direction that he knew the Takshaka bird would come. And Bhagavatam tells us that they met. They actually met. But when Takshaka saw Kashyap, it knew why Kashyap was there. So it flattered Kashyap. It presented Kashyap with beautiful, valuable offerings. And by doing that, it distracted Kashyap. Instead of Kashyap counteracting the poison, Takshaka talked to him nicely, pleased him with a lot of praises, and then said, Hari Bol. And he left. And the snake bird then, because it could assume any form it wished, it continued. What does this show? This shows that when an awkward situation is created by Krishna, only he can end it. Only he can end it. Kashyap could not end it. No one can end it. And it will end the way Krishna wants it to end. No other way. And so the Takshaka bird then moved on to straight, dovetailed its attention to Parikshit Maharaj. And Bhagavatam tells us, as all the living beings of the universe came and saw, he assumed the form of a Brahmana. But the moment it came in front of the sage, it assumed the form of the snake bird, and it bit him. And the poison that was given in the bite was so powerful that the great Parikshit Maharaj's body was completely immolated, completely burnt. Within a moment, and in a fraction of a second, it was immediately burned to ashes by the fire of the snake poison. But what must we remember? The snake Takshaka was meant to kill Parikshit Maharaj's body, but it was never meant to hurt Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj was protected by the Lord till the end of his life. And he left this world in glorious sadhu sangha and Krishna katha. So what looked like an awkward situation turned out to be a glorious situation. And that is how we must repose our faith in Krishna, Prabhus and Matajis. There will be many changes and challenges that will come to us. But in the association of devotees, as Parikshit Maharaj prayed for, having complete unflinching attachment to Krishna, and being friendly to all living entities and seeing the hand of Krishna, that is the royal road of coming out of an awkward situation. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Srila Gurudev ki. Jai.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you to all devotees for being on board. So nice to see every devotee here. So many nice faces. Krishna Kinkar Prabhu, I'm seeing you. Hari Hari. Viraj Prabhu, Anand Prabhu, you are the host. So I want to thank you very much. To all the devotees I see in Sydney, and maybe in other parts of Australia, thank you very much. I see a lot of devotees. I see Rasamrit Prabhu. I think you're in Abu Dhabi, Prabhu. Hari Hari. Nice to see you. Very nice. And I see devotees from Trivandrum. I see devotees from Rajkot. Thank you so much for being on board today. Is there anything else I can do, Viraj Prabhu, Anand Prabhu?
Can we ask a question, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'll try my best.
Prabhu, thank you very much, Prabhuji. First of all, I felt as if I have my rebirth today, having your darshan and hearing from you, having the e-association and also seeing the galaxy of devotees. Very, very wonderful class, Prabhuji. I was trying to make notes and I found that every single line you spoke is actually a very nice point, and very nicely you explained how Krishna's desire is supreme and Krishna's kindness and his plan and the character of Parikshit Maharaj, which is so wonderful. I just wanted to ask one question, Prabhu. Like, at the level where I am, or most of the devotees we are like touch me not plant. So sometimes anything, spark of a moment. Sometimes we blast. So how to become the lotus flower and get that waterproof protection, where we will not be disturbed by the material calamities.
Very nice point, Prabhuji. Two things come to mind very quickly. One is the verse 3:5:13. If we want to come out of this world like the lotus flower, then we should constantly perform Krishna Katha in whatever form we can. I'm sure you're doing so many preaching programs, having online study of bhagavatam, scriptures, kirtan, offering items to the Lord, doing Manglarati. They are all considered Krishna Katha. And as long as we're under the safe shelter of Krishna Katha, Prabhu, then, there won't be any disturbance to such a point where we become so absorbed in that activity, which has nothing to do with Krishna. So the indifference comes very naturally. And whatever anger and frustration that comes normally in these situations, Krishna Katha has a way of calming that effect, Prabhu. The other practical point that is coming to mind is what you said about the flower. Padma, in Bhagavatam, no, in Bhagavad Gita, I think it is in the 5th chapter, 10th verse, if I'm not wrong, 5:10 maybe. Brahmani adhaya karmani. I think in that verse, Prabhu, it is very nicely stated that Krishna tells Arjuna that if you do not want to be touched by the sins and the reactions of the sins of this world, the best way to do it is that whatever activities that we perform, we should resign from that activity after we perform it. The word adhaya means to resign. So every activity that we do, we perform it to the best we can. But after finishing it, we should resign. Just like every day you are a daily employed worker, Morning you sign up for employment. At the end of the day, before you leave, you just resign. Then whatever happens, you leave it with Krishna. And Bhagavad Gita tells us that for one who does that, then Padma Patram Iva Basaha. Just like the lotus flower is not touched by mud, that devotee can continue to exist in this material world, but he's not touched by the results of the activities. Is that helpful, Prabhu?
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for a wonderful answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna. How are you?
Fine, Prabhuji. How are you?
Very nice. Very happy to hear you.
It was a wonderful class, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question is, since it was the Parikshit Maharaj's class, which you have told, Parikshit Maharaj was a lineage grandson of Arjun, who was also a great devotee. Parikshit Maharaj himself was a great devotee. But we can see that in this material world, we are struggling devotees. It can happen that we are having, if we are put in an awkward situation, and when we are struggling to become a devotee, doesn't the awkward situation leave our faith from Krishna? In that situation, what should we do? Because we always hear that Krishna is very merciful, Krishna is very kind, and when Krishna puts us in awkward situation, it can bound to happen that our faith also sometimes leaves Krishna. So we can think, okay, Krishna has put us in awkward situation, Krishna is not there to help us. In such situation, what as a devotee we should do?
It's a very nice question. If we are in a situation where there's an awkward situation, Mataji, and we are naturally disturbed and some impact on our faith is there, the first thing we should do is that we should turn to the association of devotees, especially the devotees whom we can confidentially open our hearts to. And we should actually speak with the devotees and we should explain to them our situation and get guidance from them. If we are initiated and we have our spiritual masters, then we should by all means reach out to our spiritual masters and ask them for guidance. But in the absence of Diksha, we have so many Siksha Gurus. And any devotee who inspires you, whom you know, by action, has the capacity to give you the essence of Bhagavatam, you please turn to the devotee. share your heart. And through that devotee, Krishna will reveal his plan for you. How do we know this, Mataji? Because in 1124 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in the purport, Prabhupada writes there very nicely, no one can know the plan of the Lord, especially when it's an awkward situation, which is also his plan. No one can know the plan of the Lord, but the plans of the devotees of the Lord are as good as his plans. So if one follows the plans of the devotees, then one will surely follow the plan of the Lord. So if we turn to the devotees who are exalted and who can give us some understanding of the plan of the Lord, then definitely, Mataji, Krishna is so kind that he will just elevate and accelerate your devotional service through that devotee, so that if your faith is tested, it will grow stronger. One thing I want to share with you, I asked my Guru Maharaj that, Maharaj, why is our faith tested? Why doesn't it just grow? Maharaj told me, before you put up a picture on the wall, you put a nail in the wall. When you put the nail in the wall, even before you place the picture, you always do one thing. You will just test the nail a little bit, isn't it? To make sure it is strong. Why do you do that? You've already knocked it in, it should be there. But you do it to test it. Because if it's strong enough to hold the picture, then you will leave it. But if it's not strong enough, you will hit it harder. The hitting may seem very painful, right? But it is needed, because when the nail goes deeper, it becomes stronger. So very often, Mataji, when we come to Krishna consciousness, Maharaj told me that your faith will be tested based on your sincerity. But just remember the picture and remember the nail. Somebody has to test it, isn't it? To come to Krishna is no mean feat. One has to become so qualified to come to Krishna. So Krishna creates a qualifying exam, and he has to test you. But he will never fail you. He may test you, and if you're not ready, he will put you through another course. But you'll come through eventually. But if you test it and it goes deeper, then you can actually frame that beautiful picture of Krishna, on that nail. And in that same way, we can frame a beautiful picture of Krishna in our heart when we are actually tested in our faith. Is that helpful, Mataji?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very much helpful.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, धन्यवाद प्रणाम. जय केशव दास बोल.
Jai Keshav Prabhu, Hari Hari Bol. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your wonderful class, and it is very blissful. So, Prabhuji, I have a small question that regarding the awkward situation, even in the office also. So sometimes office we are in the anxiety and we are in the tension, stressful situation, and also awkward situation there. So at that time the chanting goes down very means chanting quality instead of it is going down. So that time actually it should happen that we should take that we should remember that we are helpless condition will improve the chanting, but it is going other way around. So how it will come out from that situation?
Good question, Prabhu. I think, all office situations are awkward situations, actually. Maharaj told me, in the office, it is awkward. When you come home, it is awkward. When you're in hospital, it is awkward. Just before you die, also, it's awkward. So actually, everywhere it is awkward. It is surprising if something is not awkward, actually. But you're right, Prabhu. Because of the terrible atmosphere, in offices, it's very difficult to remember Krishna. But again, the same formula applies, Prabhu. If our office situation is very difficult, then one should actually increase the quality of the devotional service. And we can do it from home before we go to the office. And we must definitely do it when we come back from the office. I remember Guru Maharaj telling me the reason why Gora Arti is there is to dispel that ghostly atmosphere that you get from the office, the hellish atmosphere. And that's why when we come back, just by performing Gora Arti, we all become very peaceful. And in the same way, Prabhu, if we do nice Mangala Arti in the morning and chant Krishna's names, and we seek shelter of Lord Nrsimhadev in particular, then what will happen is that he will always protect our consciousness in whatever difficulty there can be. Yes. And Prabhu, you should not feel alone. When these situations come up, you should always be able to speak about it, the challenges about it. And it should be with a devotee. Because, there is no soft corner in this material world. So if we don't speak about these matters with devotees who should have a soft corner, then we will be we will feel very discouraged. So keep the faith, Prabhu. Don't worry. In all the Krishna Katha that's going, Krishna will automatically give you indifference to the situations which can sometimes be very hellish in the office.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare
I'll
Krishna.
take two
Prabhuji.
last
Thank you.
questions and then I have to go.
Hare
Last
Krishna.
two.
Prabhuji, Prabhu, one question. I also have a small one only. Raghuveer Krishnadas here, Prabhuji.
Yes, Raghuveer Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I just want to ask, in an awkward situation, when the awkward situation is happening, at that point in time, immediate remembrance of Krishna does not come. It takes little time. What can be done to immediately relate it to Krishna? Hare Krishna.
That's a good question. That is not in your control, Prabhu. That's not in our control.
But then that's needed. No, so what to do? How to do? How to then do
The
that?
only thing we have to do, Prabhu, is not to worry that it must be on immediate or urgent basis. The only thing we have to worry is when the problem comes, we should ask ourselves that there must be something I've done to create this problem. That induces humility, Prabhu. The faster we see the hand of Krishna and we see our mistake, as Parikshit Maharaj saw his mistake, the faster we will be protected by Krishna.
Oh, so faster we see the mistake, the faster the remembrance will come.
Yes. And you can only see the mistake if you accept that, something I did is not correct. And that can only happen when pride is low and humility is strong. And that can only happen when devotional service is very consistent and devotional service is nicely done. Because artificially we can't create humility. But with good devotional service, Krishna himself will give us the impetus and the inspiration to see the hand of Krishna. That's why I mentioned in the class, Prabhu, that Parikshit Maharaj's reaction the moment he did something awkward was so fast because of his entire devotional stock, his whole life. His life was a lifetime in preparation for the awkward situation and his eventual leaving. And that is how we will be able to automatically, by Krishna's mercy, if he wants, it'll happen. He will move it from what we call urgent basis to immediate basis. We can try, but it's really up to him, Prabhuji. I hope that helps.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, my dandavats.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna. Sorry. One Asha CM Mataji, for some time, has very politely been raising her hand. So if we give her an opportunity
sure.
for asking question, so I've just unmuted her.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Mataji, you have a question?
It seems she's not.
Mataji?
Hare Krishna, bro. Can I speak? Can I speak?
Are you there? I think you're there, but I'm not sure whether you're speaking. Okay, never mind. You can write to me, Mataji, if you have a question. I'm happy to take it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I ask my question till that time?
The last question. Is that okay, Viraj Prabhu? The last question?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's up to you.
Please, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for this nice class in a situation where we are all finding ourselves in such a situation. And as Jaikesh Prabhu just asked that we are in office in very much in awkward situation and we are not able to remember Krishna in that situation. But this office has actually come home now. We are all working from home and that days are, I feel the days are different now, and now we used to have a better situation at home, but now home is also has become a place where there are a lot of awkward situation due to work from home. So I see myself working till late in the night and early in the morning also when I'm supposed to chant, I'm working. So, and that work is also not so peaceful, where people are calling on Teams and so many things are happening and shouting, not at the night time, but of course in the daytime. Those things are happening, and the devotional service actually as such is kind of, there is an effect on devotional service. I'm finding time to chant only during nights. how to come out of this situation.
Prabhu, if
How
you
to
are put
sustain
in a situation where it is, so difficult, you'll have to see it from two different ways, Prabhu. The first is, I don't think there's an alternative job that you can get at this moment. It's such a difficult time. If Guru Maharaj was here, he would have asked you, is there any way you can, do something else? But I think your answer right now is the answer all of us are giving. Whatever you have, you better stick to it, Prabhu, because times are so unpredictable and difficult. Then what can we do? The only thing we can do is to increase the quality of what we can do when we are chanting. And we can increase our helplessness, Prabhu, and pray to Krishna and Guru and Srila Prabhupada, especially Nrsimhadev, to give us strength, to give us strength. In one lecture by Guru Maharaj on Nrsimhadev's, one of his prayers that we just heard recently, Maharaj said that in this world, there are a lot of mafias, but people don't realize supreme mafia is Nrsimhadev, you see. In other words, he's more powerful than any other mafias. But if we just turn to him and ask him to give us the courage and the strength to face these difficulties, he will do it, Prabhu. But you just need time, and perhaps you need to talk to devotees. So I would suggest that after this call, sometime today and tomorrow, you and I should connect. And just by talking and discussing the difficulties of material nature amongst devotees, we can try and help each other to come out of a difficult situation. That's why association of devotees is needed. So my request is, don't feel discouraged. The good news is the miseries in this world don't last. Bad news is happiness also don't last. But the good news is finally this body has to go also. I know it sounds very funny, but actually it is true. You just weather the storm now, and the time will come when you will be able to pull out of this. Do what you can, but whatever you can do, you just put it at the lotus feet of Lord Nrsimhadev. And you remember the Lord in his transcendental form, and he will slay all the Hiranyakashipus, who are actually disturbing your mind. I don't mean rape, but at least, our tendencies will go. I hope that is helpful, Sadashiv Prabhu. And we pray for you, Prabhuji. Prabhu, keep chanting. Yeah. Keep chanting. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Anand Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu Sriniketan here. So,
yes, Sriniketan Prabhu. Yes.
Sorry to Prabhuji. Prabhu, just a quick question. Prabhuji, we know from the episode of Maharaj Parikshit that when he left after doing this act of putting the snake, and then later on he realized he repented on this act. So, but do we come across we suppose if we come across such a situation, should we go and ask forgiveness from the person? Like in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, we never heard that he went to Shamik Rishi and asked forgiveness. He repented.
Yes.
Kindly guide on this, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
The reason why Parikshit Maharaj did not go and seek Shamika Rishi's forgiveness was Shamika Rishi and him were great devotees. They were connected by a heart-to-heart transaction. As great devotees, they both knew each other's consciousness very well. And they both knew that they were not faultless, that they were faultless each other, and they were under the hands and the control of the Lord. So at that level, Prabhu, there was no need for them to do anything externally because they were completely absorbed with Krishna. But at our level, what you said is very practical. If we at any point of time, have offended Vaishnavas, or we know in our hearts we have not said the right things, we have been motivated differently, then a true signal and true symptom of one's repentance is to have the courage to go to the Vaishnava, discuss the matter, readily admit how we feel, and seek forgiveness in the most sincere way that we can. And in doing so, my experience is all Vaishnavas are very kind. They appreciate the honesty of a devotee when these things happen. And they also forgive very easily because their hearts have Krishna. And that way we also grow in devotional service because they will also bless us. I hope that's useful, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much to all of you. Very happy to see you. Thank you to Vaman Kshetra as always.
Yes.
Please pray for each other. And we continue with this nice fire of Bhagavatam. Anand Prabhu, thank you very much. I love your virtual background. Perfect for today.